Alright, so first off, you will want to disconnect your battery, and then you will want to go through and remove and disconnect all of the vacuum hoses that are connected to the intake, along with the electrical connections, because my plan is to just lift this out of the way. Alright, so first thing you'll want to do is on the back side of the manifold here, you will have two bolts, and you will want to remove them. You can get a ratchet wrench in there, and they are 1/2 inch. And then you'll have to work this vacuum line and this back vacuum line loose, probably with the screwdriver or something in there. They're probably cooked. And then you can go through and remove the intake, and then there will be 5 bolts on top of the upper intake manifold, and you want to remove them. They are a 10mm. And then once that's done, you can lift it up and see what else you'll need to disconnect in order to move it out of your way far enough. Alright, so once you have all your bolts removed in the back there, the 1/2 inch bolts, and these 5 10mm bolts, with the vacuum hoses disconnected, you should be able to just lift up the intake manifold, and I just bungee corded it up and out of the way. And now you will want to drain some of the coolant in order to disconnect this radiator hose here. I'm going to go ahead and do the lower manifold gasket as well since I'm in here. Once this is removed, go ahead and disconnect all of your injectors. And there's little tabs on them. You'll pull up, and then you'll release the clips on all 4 injectors. Last clip, I'm going to use this tool, and I will reach down in there and hopefully, yeah, and it'll just pull it right up. Make sure you don't pry too hard on the injector. If you try to reach your fingers in there, you will end up snapping it. Before removing the fuel rail and the injectors, I would recommend cleaning everything so you don't end up forcing all of that into your injectors. Alright, now you'll want to remove this water neck here. You're going to have a 10mm on the back, followed by a 10mm nut on the front, and then there's the AC line here. It has a bracket down below. It's hard to see. You'll see it when you're looking or doing the work, but there is a 1/4 inch little adjustable nut there that you can loosen in order to pivot this out of the way, because there's a bracket that sits right here, sits right over the top of the nut on top of this housing, and that is a 1/2 inch. So you'll want to remove both of those, and then you can lift the neck up, and then that will allow you to remove your fuel rail. Now on the front side of the intake manifold, you'll want to remove this bolt, and there's one on the other side over here, in that direction. They are 15mm. Alright, as a secondary option, you can remove, after removing these 2 bolts here, if you go straight down, if you can get your hands down there, there's a bolt holding this bracket. One more bolt right in the middle. It's probably about 16 inches further down. You can remove that. That is also a 15mm. It would make it easier to put everything in place and remove everything, although it is not completely necessary to remove this. Alright, so now that I have everything cleaned up, I will start reinstalling everything. I'm going to start with positioning my gaskets and finger tightening all of my bolts, and then I will go ahead and be sure to post and share all of the torque specifications and the order that you should tighten them. So we have the lower intake manifold bolted in. You'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5, and they'll all be torqued down to 105 inch-pounds. And then when that is complete, you will want to remove or clean all the injector ends. Use a clean rag, and then you'll want to remove all the old injector O-rings. I highly recommend putting brand new ones on. Alright, before installing the fuel rail with the injectors, I recommend applying a tiny bit of grease. I'm using dielectric grease on all the O-rings. Don't use too much because you don't want anything to clog the injectors. And then once you have all your grease on there and applied, it should just press down into place. Now these are brand new O-rings, so when I say press down into place, it probably won't go very smoothly. But I'm gonna line them up here. Make sure everything's out of the way. Oh. And I lied. It did go smoothly. So, voila. As a precautionary measure, I am going to also put dielectric grease in all of the injector electrical connections. So here we have the water neck. I did replace the thermostat and the gasket with it. I could not find a torque specification for this. And the housing is plastic, but it does have metal rings to help prevent cracking it. But what I did was I tightened it down until the surface area right here was flush, well, almost flush. And I figured it's accessible, so if I have any issues I can tighten it a little bit more later, but I just hand tightened it. Alright, so the lower intake manifold is completely installed, and now it is okay to put your two 15mm bolts back in the front on this plate piece here. Alright, so now I have the lower manifold installed and I have my gasket in place. There's only one way that this gasket can go on. Alright, so at the end here, torqued all these back down to 105 inch-pounds, and it goes in the pattern of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then you want to make sure that you reconnect this vacuum line right here and this vacuum line here, and then when you put your intake back on, make sure you tighten this up. And this little wire here, this is mounted right on the back of the intake, so it might end up falling downward, so try not to forget this. Then also another thing to just make sure you have done is these back bolts here, make sure you have tightened both of them. They're a 1/2 inch, and there's 2 on the back side of the intake that hold the plate to the intake.